The teacher sipped a cup of hot tea while chatting with his students. That was when the teacher's lecture was about to begin. Although the tea is bitter and hot when drinking, the sweetness is soon replaced. That's why many adult men enjoy tea to feel its particular taste. Not only that, tea also helps drinkers become alert to concentrate on work. At that time, a student asked the teacher,
"Teacher, can you share your past lives for all class members to know? We are very curious and want to know about your practicing journey in past lives."
A curious question. There are curious questions that will not be answered. However, there are questions that, when answered, will help everyone on their journey to overcome suffering, to become more mature on the path of practice in the human world. I have many memories of past lives and many lives of practice in the human world. What do people want to know about?
Teacher, can you share about the life in which you became an enlightened being? People want to hear about it.
After reflection, the teacher began to speak.
Before teaching today's lesson, I will share some memories of my practicing journey to achieve full enlightenment. This information and memories will help everyone when learning today's lesson. In my previous life, in my human life, the Tulin within me achieved complete enlightenment. In that life, I was a crown prince, the child of a king and queen. I was their only son. Our country was in South Asia, with a mountainous terrain. However, our capital was in a reasonably flat area surrounded by fields. Because I would become the king in the future, they let me learn everything to lead the country. I had to learn a lot of scriptures and martial arts. However, that father king seemed to know in advance that I would leave that kingdom to seek the path of enlightenment. He expanded the capital 3 times larger than the original to prevent me from leaving the capital. High walls were built and surrounded the entire capital. In addition, they made a temple so I could go there and study with the teachers. When I grew up, I had a wife and children. However, the boredom in my soul made me leave the capital to find my path to enlightenment. After 4 unsuccessful attempts to leave the capital from 4 directions, I finally escaped and headed southeast alone. On my journey to find the path to enlightenment, I went through the process of studying with teachers. However, I did not achieve enlightenment through various meditation processes. Suffering still exists in the mind when no longer resting in meditation. After that, I went through different practices to find enlightenment. A typical example was practicing asceticism. That was not eating for a long time. That left my body with only skin and bones, and my body became weaker than ever. It was wrong to practice by not taking the body's form seriously. With that way of practice, I thought I had to leave my body behind in that life, with failure on my journey to find the path to enlightenment. One night when I entered meditation, a certain Tuolin used 2 metal tools and tapped each other 3 times. The first knock makes a deafening and hard-to-hear sound, the second knock makes an unclear sound, and the third knock makes a soft and easy-to-hear sound. At that moment, I knew that the Tulin was trying to help me understand something on my practicing journey to make the best choice for seeking enlightenment. From the suggested sounds, I understood that loud sound is like the practice of being bound and taking body form seriously, and the results will be like that sound. The sound has no resonance. It is like the sound of death, like abandoning the body on the path of practice. Melodious sound is the balance between body, mind, and wisdom to create an excellent sound of results. A fragile path of enlightenment has been opened by the union of body, mind, and intellect to develop achievements that benefit everyone. When I understood that, I stopped meditating and rewarded myself with sleep. That night, I learned about the mission of the practicing path, my origin and truth about myself, and my memories and achievements in past lives. There was a significant change in me at that time. I ate the next day again to ensure the health and vitality of my body. On the second night, after hearing the guiding sounds from a Tuolin while meditating, it was a whole moon night when the moon was high in the sky and almost midnight. I walked down to the river near where I meditated. In the bright moonlight, I floated in the river. My body floats on the water, sometimes floating, sometimes sinking. The cool water washed away all the ascetic practices in the past. A miraculous thing happened under the bright moonlight, and with the cool water blending into the austere body at that time. Rays of silvery white light radiated from my body around me. At that time, my thoughts about the origin and tasks on practicing practice in the human world that my Tuolin had to do were clear. Because of that, my Tuolin and body radiate the radiance of enlightenment about my mission and tasks. After showering, I went ashore and looked at the river and the moon. The piecing together of past life memories and the Tuolin's mission made me reflect and think about it. Suddenly, 2 snakes appeared from 2 bushes in front and slithered towards where I was sitting. At the same time, 2 white doves flew down from the top of the tree and turned into 2 Tuolins. Each of them used a bow created from magic and killed 2 snakes. Perhaps they were afraid that those 2 snakes would endanger me. Then I looked at the corpses of the 2 snakes and those 2 Tuolins and said to them, "Why did you kill them? Do you know what they did in their past lives that caused them to live in such a daily body in this life? When I become fully enlightened, I will enlighten all of you." After that, the 2 Tuolins said goodbye and continued their mission of following and protecting my body in that life. Under the bright moonlight at night, I fell asleep on the riverbank. It is a remarkable sleep when all the memories of the Tuolin are recreated and linked to the achievements in the practicing journey of many lifetimes. That was the night I became fully enlightened. After achieving complete enlightenment, I took on my first students and taught them. People from all over come and become my students. I have traveled to many countries to preach complete enlightenment knowledge. While spreading the teachings of enlightenment, my wife and children also participated in studying and accompanying us on the path of spreading it. Those are memories and moments of achieving enlightened wisdom in past lives. It is not attained by meditation. Those achievements are achieved in many previous lives linked together after a journey of ascetic practice to create a path to complete enlightenment. It's the same in my life. The achievements from past lives are linked with the mission of the Tuolin and the process of experiencing the path of suffering in the human world to create the most excellent enlightenment knowledge when there is knowledge of the smallest particle of energy accompany.
Teacher, please teach everyone about the method of liberation from suffering in life, as well as on the path of practice for everyone to practice.
The previous lessons are all knowledge of enlightenment, and all the lectures are 2 truths. I told you that story because it is relevant to today's sermon. In today's lesson, we will learn all about the types of suffering, the causes of suffering, the method, and the achievements after liberating all suffering. From the previous speeches, you have understood the origin, mission, nature of the Tuolin, and state of the mind and human. Therefore, people will not feel pressured when they know the truth of suffering and the method of liberation from pain. Everyone will find it easy to apply that solution to achieve achievements in life. When discussing human suffering, we also need to separate the suffering of the Tuolin when not incarnated in human form and when incarnated in human form. Such a division will help people clearly understand the nature of suffering and practice the most effective liberation from pain. 1. The suffering of the Tuolin. The suffering of the Tuolin is a state of information disorder within the energy particle structure system. It breaks the bond between positive and neutral particle groups when destructive energies attack the negative particle group. The attack of energies of destruction causes the Tuolin to become painful, leading to complete decomposition and destruction. The suffering of the Tuolin has only one type: disintegration and collapse. There are 3 causes of suffering. Each Tuolin does not understand itself and other Tuolins. That is not understanding the nature of truth within oneself and other Tuolins. The nature of wisdom is encoded false information, called wisdom of ignorance, and encoded truth information, called enlightened wisdom. Tuolins do not understand the nature of all things, events, and phenomena in the universe. That is not understanding the toxins and goodness that exist within them. Tuolins do not understand the nature of destructive energy. That is not understanding toxins as well as the value of destructive energy. The 3 causes of suffering for the Tuolin are closely linked in inseparability. When each Tuolin has from 1 to all 3 of the above causes, they will easily be disintegrated and destroyed by the energy of destruction. Being attacked by destructive energy causes them pain, and death will end their pain. The method of liberating suffering for the Tuolin. Because we have understood the cause of the Tuolin suffering and destruction, therefore all Tuolins must practice the path to liberation from suffering as follows. All Tuolins must incarnate into humans to live in the human world in many lifetimes of practice. Tuolins must understand the toxins that are released from within oneself. Tuolins must understand the good values within themselves. Finally, Tuolins must practice the mechanism to eliminate all toxins within themselves. At the same time, they must practice the mechanism to activate goodness within themselves. Eliminating poison and activating goodness is a mechanism of sustainable transformation, achievement after liberating the suffering of Tuolins. When they practice the sustainable transformation mechanism, they will produce countless positive and neutral energy particles with high strength and durability. Besides, negative energy particles are produced with enough power to do the job. Then, the Tuolins mature and transform their yin and yang embryos into a sustainable energy filter. Finally, they can absorb destructive energy back to themselves to produce super energy particles. Those super energies help them become immortal and support all things in the universe to develop sustainably. 2. Human suffering. When the Tuolin incarnates and abides in human form, human suffering includes the suffering of the Tuolin. From the suffering of the Tuolin, human suffering is manifested into many different types, and those sufferings become clear and easy to recognize. First, we must understand what human suffering is. Human suffering is the soul's binding, viciousness, and attachment to everything in life. It can be seen that the object of human suffering is the soul. Suffering is the best environment for the soul inside the human body to be experienced. From there, the toxic and kind natures are revealed. That is the perfect path for the existence and sustainable development of each Tuolin. Types of suffering of humans. Humans are made up of 3 elements: Tuolin, body form, and brain wisdom. Therefore, the manifestations of human suffering are richer than Tuolins when they do not abide in human form. Human suffering is divided into 2 groups: suffering due to natural laws and suffering in each person's mind. Such a division of human suffering will help people easily identify, face, and practice liberation from all suffering. Suffering due to natural laws. Types of suffering due to natural laws. There are 6 types of suffering caused by natural laws to humans, including suffering due to birth, aging, illness, death, suffering from living but having to separate from each other, and separation by death. Everyone knows and understands these sufferings are natural laws they must experience and live in. No one can escape any one of all types of suffering by the laws of nature. As follows: suffering due to being born. That is suffering in the mother's mind when she has to carry a constantly growing fetus. The sudden change in a mother's body when she is pregnant makes her think negatively about herself, her fetus, her husband, and her relatives. Hatred towards their loved ones may appear in their minds when their loved ones have had evil thoughts or actions towards them. Mothers become depressed, anxious, and fearful when their soul energy is depleted to separate and nurture the fetus. In addition to the confusion and suffering of the mind, the pain and discomfort of their bodies make them easily angry and disappointed in themselves and their loved ones. The fetus's body must also suffer the same suffering. The fetus suffers when squeezed into the cramped space inside the mother's womb. In addition, when the mother is suffering from negative thoughts, the negative energy from the mother's soul will nourish the cells of the fetus's body. It is part of the cause of diseases in the fetus's body after birth. The suffering from getting old. When people are born, they face the passage of time that cannot be stopped. That makes people mature and grow old. Growing up is getting older. It is evidence of every cell in the human body constantly working hard and becoming exhausted of energy and life within. Growing up and getting older makes people worried, anxious, and even afraid because their body becomes increasingly weaker and no longer healthy. Many people look for certain medications or foods to prevent cell aging. They want and desire to enjoy everything in a healthy body, so they hate the old age that already exists in their body. The suffering due to illness. Illness for most people is the suffering of all kinds of suffering, because they believe that when they have diseases, especially diseases that are deadly and cannot be cured, even if people have a lot of money or high status, they cannot escape the death of the disease. Illness makes people miserable, depressed, and clinging to everything they have. Poor people fear illness because they do not have money for treatment. Rich people fear death when they have diseases that cannot be cured. People with high status and wealth fear their loved ones will suffer from mental illnesses. They fear being judged and looked down upon by others. Illnesses include various physical and mental illnesses, immersing people in suffering and despair. Mild illnesses make people feel stuffy, tired, and uncomfortable. Serious diseases that cannot be cured make people suffer and despair, waiting for death to come to them, plus the suffering from death. Death creates the most intense moment in a person's life. People see death as the end of everything. When death happens to them, they will lose everything, from money, status, their loved ones, and even their bodies rotting under the cold soil. Because of this, the moment after death, the soul of the dead becomes confused, frightened, regretful, and always cling to things they lost. The suffering caused by death makes people cling tightly to something they cannot take with their souls. Therefore, they quickly become attached, angry, and hateful towards someone who hurts them or causes their death. Anger and hatred reach the highest level in the souls of those who commit suicide. Because when they live, resentment towards the person they once loved, maybe because of oppression from someone, and perhaps also despair in life, makes them commit suicide. They are immersed in the extreme suffering of all kinds of suffering because the suffering of the soul due to suicide is a combination of the suffering of death and other types of suffering created by the mind. The suffering from separation, the frustrations in the heart, the memories, the regrets, the pain, and the hatred caused by separation while everyone is still alive are unpleasant types of suffering. The suffering of separation is such that parents have to separate from their children when they get married and no longer have the protection of their parents. The suffering that lovers have to separate for many different reasons. The suffering and pain when parents witness their beloved children going to the battlefield to face life and death, whether defending the homeland or invading another country. Young children and wives had to say goodbye to their fathers and husbands when facing death on the battlefield. Couples separate because of conflicts and disagreements, leaving pain and hatred for each other and their children. The pain of separation is exceptionally fierce. It seems impossible to heal the wounds. Even the resentment from this type of suffering lasts many lifetimes because of the hatred. The suffering from separation when a loved one dies. The suffering of death does not only exist and lasts for souls when they have to leave their bodies behind in the human world. Their relatives and loved ones become regretful and mournful in the agony of witnessing them no longer exist. Fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, and children, when they witness their loved ones die from illness, accidents, suicide, murder, or old age. They were immersed in pity and pain. That pain makes them inconsolable when they witness their loved ones no longer on earth when they were young, wives, and husbands. The cause of suffering is due to natural laws. Natural laws create the above types of suffering. It means that everyone understands and realizes they cannot escape these sufferings. They don't know whether those sufferings will come to them sooner or later, and precisely at what time in their lives. Because it is a natural law, there is no cause for each type of suffering in this group of natural laws. It is because the Tulins made a great vow to incarnate as humans to experience all suffering. When experiencing grief, the nature of toxins and goodness in their souls is revealed and activated. That is the goal that Tulin life form pursue, and when suffering is achieved, that is their success. Therefore, from the perspective of Tuolin, reaching the initial goals on the practicing journey in human form is a joy, the method of liberation from suffering due to natural laws, because understanding the origin of humanity, the nature of Tuolin, and each person's mission when carrying a soul within. Because each human life is very short, suffering by natural law always comes suddenly without warning. Therefore, to liberate the suffering of natural law, everyone must race against time, devoting their strength, intelligence, and time to help and save people, animals, and all species without discrimination. Besides, practice forcing out all the toxins in the mind when they break out. Doing those two solutions at the same time is the mechanism to eliminate toxins and activate kindness in each person's soul. It is also a sustainable transformation mechanism because sustainable energy particles are produced in the soul in large quantities. Racing against time is extremely necessary because people cannot know how many negative energy particles of karma are contained in their minds, so they do not understand when illness, accidents, and death will occur. Only when people diligently practice to eliminate toxins and activate compassion, their souls will produce countless positive energy particles. At that time, positive energy is the key to liberation from suffering caused by illness and death. Racing against time helps the soul produce sustainable energy particles that allows the Tuolin to mature quickly. Then the soul will have the power to control and transform destructive energy into super energy particles. That is the result of each Tuolin's journey of practice in the human world, suffering in the soul. There are 10 types of suffering in mind, including suffering due to possession, non-possession, love, hatred, having wisdom, not having wisdom, success in wishing, failure in hoping, action, and inaction. These types of suffering result from information reaction processes in all interaction scenarios of each person in the 4 forms of human life in the human world. The 4 forms in human life include family form, social form, form between teacher and student, and national form. It is suffering in the mind because each person will not be able to know whether they have any toxins released when interacting in life or not. The toxins are the ignorance of the intellect, which then causes the mind to become ignorant. Ignorance is the suffering state of the mind. Ignorance. The mind suffers because of possessions. People are clingy and vicious in being satisfied with everything they have, even hurting people and all species to protect the things they own. Things like money, status, fame, family, and possessions that they try to satisfy cause their souls to drown in their toxins. Therefore, their souls become miserable because they cannot eliminate those toxins due to not activating the goodness within them. Satisfaction with what they have in human life causes them to miss favorable conditions to practice activating kindness through helping actions, saving others and all species from what they have. The mind suffers because of non-possession. People become attached and miserable because of things they do not have and cannot achieve, while others have and enjoy them. The poisons of ignorance in the desire to be satisfied by something make them unaware of their toxins. Their souls are immersed in the suffering of ignorance and cannot take advantage of their circumstances to activate the goodness within them. Wasting human life on things they don't have makes them unaware of the preciousness of time to cultivate, study, and practice dedication to help everyone and all species. The soul suffers because of love. People are vicious, clinging to the love they possess, such as husband and wife, children, family, nation, homeland, and the love they do not have. That causes the soul inside them to suffer because of the satisfaction of that love. They become uncontrollable towards their loved ones when trying to control and protect that love. They cannot identify the poison of love being released from their souls. Therefore, they cannot balance love and dedication, helping and saving everyone and all creatures. The mind suffers because of hatred. People become miserable in torment and resentful towards each other because of things they do not like or hurt each other. The toxins of ignorance of this kind of suffering cause them to wallow without transforming into virtuous actions. They are vicious and cling to people and things they hate. They do not realize the value of interactions in life that help them understand the toxins and goodness within them. So, they become a waste of human life immersed in this suffering. The mind suffers because it has wisdom. Arrogance and contempt for others who do not have the same intelligence and education as themselves cause these people to sink into the suffering of having intelligence. They cling and linger in pride in the wisdom they possess. They are immersed in that ignorance and do not know how to take advantage of the intellectual values they have to help people, animals, and all species. They do not understand that when they leave their bodies behind in the human world, they will be forgotten, and no one will remember them when they fail to bring noble values to people and humanity. It is the enlightenment of wisdom without realizing it, so they are engrossed in the pride of the knowledge they have. The mind suffers because it has no wisdom. Suffering is expressed as fear, low self-esteem, resentment, and self-torture when people see that they do not have the same understanding and knowledge as others. They suffer in accepting their lives as they are. They suffered under the oppression and domination of the higher classes, of those with intelligence and power. They do not realize that their life scenario is like this to awaken the goodness within them, to rise to study and overcome that adversity. The mind suffers because of the success in wishing. From suffering to hoping for things people do not possess, their suffering increases by wishing. The attachments of desires to satisfy what they want to keep their souls cling to everything. When they achieve what they desire by begging from someone or the invisible world, they continue to be immersed in the suffering of possession and wisdom. They are bound to the idea that they are more intelligent than others to achieve things they cannot possess. These toxins cause people to be immersed in intellectual ignorance, and they cannot recognize the value of learning, cultivating enlightened knowledge, and activating the goodness within them. The mind suffers due to failure in hope. The opposite of the suffering of success in wishing is the suffering of failure. When people fail in their wishes, they become miserable, suffering because of unsatisfied possessions and losses and trade-offs, and in the end, they still fail. Not only do they suffer from not achieving desires that they are unable to fulfill, but they also suffer from not having things and having low self-esteem about their intelligence. They are absorbed in this suffering and other related sufferings without realizing that they must cultivate enlightened wisdom to understand everything and practice to activate the goodness within them. The mind suffers due to actions. When people are immersed in suffering due to attachment and ignorance of wisdom on things they own, do not possess, have knowledge, do not have wisdom, success, and failure in their wishes, hatred, and love. They will practice actions in the suffering of crystallization from the above pains. Their actions not only hurt their souls by the negative energy produced, but also hurt everyone and all species. When they act in pain and hurt everyone and all living things, it results from a mechanism that produces countless negative energy particles. These energy particles are the negative karma they create. That causes their souls to be more strongly decomposed by the attack of destructive energy. The mind suffers because of inaction. Also, from the suffering of other human sufferings, they transform into the suffering of inactivity. It can be understood that from other pains, people are bound and cling to the ignorance that their wisdom possesses. They become selfish to satisfy their ignorance in life without practicing helping actions and saving people and all species. Failure to act to activate each person's goodness causes their souls to become weakened by an excess of negative energy within them, while positive energy is not produced. That causes the soul to suffer more and more because of the decay process within them. The cause of suffering in the mind is because people are immersed in the wisdom of ignorance and are not illuminated by the light of enlightened understanding. Therefore, human souls become miserable in all forms with which they interact in life. There are 3 specific causes as follows. People do not understand themselves and others. They do not understand that there is a soul within them, the nature and mission of the soul when incarnated as a human. They do not understand the soul's origin and wish to reincarnate as a human being to live in suffering. They do not understand the value of suffering and what this life brings them. Therefore, people are immersed in the suffering of life and create countless harm to others and all living beings. Just as they do not know, they must practice kind actions towards everyone and all creatures to help their souls transform sustainably. People do not understand everything, events and phenomena in life and the universe. That is not understanding the nature of truth, including the toxins and goodness that exist within everything. Therefore, when people interact with them, they become clingy and attached to things. The toxins of people, things, events, and phenomena are linked together, causing people to sink deeply into suffering and disaster. People do not understand the nature of destructive energy. That is not understanding the toxicity and value of destructive energy. That is not understanding the mechanism of action of destructive energy, so it is easy to be influenced and destroyed by them. When dominated, the soul becomes painful and loses control until permanently destroyed. Method of liberating suffering in the mind. When each person is enlightened by the intellectual light of the two truths, we will understand the truth of all types of suffering and the causes of suffering. Then, we have the most miraculous method of liberation from pain. We will no longer grope or be ignorant in liberating pain from any other solution. The magic way to liberate suffering is for each person to race against time, face, and release all agony. As follows, we have to race against time because the time of a human life passes very fast. Each person does not know when they will get sick and die. When people die, people no longer have the opportunity to understand and transform their souls in that human life. In addition, racing against time helps the soul produce countless sustainable energy particles for their development and become safe when attacked by destructive energy. Generating many positive energy particles will help neutralize the negative energy of negative karma, and then disasters and negative karma will be dissipated in the future. Other sufferings are also easily overcome. We have to face all the sufferings and tribulations in the four forms of life with countless interacting scenarios. That means people should not run away when encountering suffering. Because the Tuolins vow to incarnate as a human to experience suffering, thereby understanding the three things, it is not allowed to run away or avoid them. Each type of suffering is an ideal environment with enough pressure and maximum compression to help the toxins in each soul be released and activate the goodness within through that suffering. Next is liberation from all sufferings and calamities. That is to practice the mechanism of forcing out and eliminating all toxins in your soul. At the same time, maximize the goodness within yourself. Doing this helps the inner soul to carry out the sustainable transformation mechanism. It means that the Tuolin is implementing the mechanism of producing positive energy particles in large quantities and negative energy particles in sufficient amounts for sustainable development. To practice this mechanism, each person must destroy the wisdom of ignorance and practice the knowledge of enlightenment. That is not harming anyone, any species, and trying to practice helping actions, saving everyone and all species. Finally, practice sharing the truths of enlightened knowledge with everyone to understand and practice. That is the most miraculous mechanism to help the inner Tuolin transform into a mature Tuolin and achieve an energy filter within the Tuolin. Achievements achieved after liberation from suffering. When each person understands the knowledge of complete enlightenment and at the same time practices the mechanism of sustainable transformation through all interactive scenarios in life, each person's inner Tuolin will mature quickly, from baby Tuolins to mature Tuolins. Internal toxins are eliminated, and good values are developed to produce countless sustainable energy particles with superintelligence stored inside each energy particle. When there is a sufficient quantity and quality of energy particles within the Tuolin structure, they will be supported by the first Tuolin to transform the yin and yang embryo inside into a perfect energy filter. The Tuolin can absorb destructive energy and produce super energy particles at that time. These super energy particles make that intelligence immortal and help everything in the universe develop sustainably. That is heaven, nirvana, compassion, bliss, happiness, joy in the mind, and wisdom. This achievement results from experiencing all the sufferings and tribulations during countless lives of practice in the human world.
When the teacher finished the lecture, a student immediately said,
"Teacher, your enlightened knowledge is completely different from all knowledge in religions or philosophical views. You show everyone the truth about all things inside and outside the universe, showing the path to liberation through the smallest actions in human life. Knowledge of the two truths does not allow anyone to abandon family, spouse, or children to seek enlightenment in some pure place. Do not allow people to harm each other or all living beings, because that is the path to self-destruction. Everyone must practice helping and saving each other and all species, because that is a sustainable transformation mechanism to save oneself and others. In particular, from the knowledge of the two truths, people should not ask for forgiveness from God or Buddha. Even if you ask, you won't get forgiveness, because intelligence, souls, and humans have no faults. The first Tuelin took all Tuelins to incarnate as humans to help them understand themselves, all things in the universe, and the energy of destruction through suffering in human form. It is the boundless compassion and love that the Father of the universe helps us, silently guiding us to overcome all the sufferings of life to understand and grow. The fact that we can eliminate all toxins and activate the goodness within is immeasurable gratitude and thanks to the great Father of humanity and the universe. The Father is the fully enlightened being, and he is not only the Father but also the teacher of humanity and the universe. Your lectures are extremely valuable and profound for everyone and humanity."
Another student immediately asked the teacher,
Teacher, how can everyone, all Tulins, know that they have eliminated all the toxins within themselves?
Your question is great. Types of suffering, causes of suffering, methods to eliminate suffering, practice of spreading enlightened knowledge, and achievements after liberating all suffering I preach. All of them are true information exposed for everyone, the Tulin to know, to learn, and practice. That is the only path to complete enlightenment, to save all Tulins, humans, animals, and everything. You have learned about the different types of suffering in the two groups of human suffering. These are the products of toxins released from the interactive scenarios in the 4 forms of life that Nalas Nalanda has built in the human world. When a type of toxin is released, that Tuolin will have to go through many similar scenarios to eliminate all the toxins of that type of poison. To do that, the 5 messengers of Nalas Nalanda will build and upgrade the most difficult and complex scenarios for each type of toxin. When the person and the Tuolin inside no longer have the smallest unit of poison, all the goodness from that poison must be activated to overcome that type of suffering completely. And, there are countless sufferings in the 2 groups of suffering in the mind and suffering due to natural laws. To help all Tuolins complete their missions, they will be incarnated as humans for many lifetimes of practice in the human world. Only by doing so can all toxins be eliminated and all goodness can be activated within each Tuolin.
Master, it is truly a long and not easy journey to eliminate all toxins and activates the maximum goodness within each Tuolin. Thus, each Tuolin will have to reincarnate for countless lifetimes of practice before it can achieve full enlightenment and successfully transform the yin and yang embryo. That isn't easy to do for all souls and humans. Do you have the best method to shorten the reincarnation process and complete the mission of each Tuolin? I hope you can teach us more.
Yes, of course. Please relax and review the lectures you have heard. Listen many times, read many times, and discuss together. That invaluable information will be stored in the yin and yang embryo of the soul inside each person and, of course, in each person's brain. I will explain that miraculous method in the following lectures.
When they heard the teacher say that, the students, in a worried mood, suddenly became happy. They are worried because they realize that becoming an enlightened being is not easy. It is even too difficult for them. However, when they heard a lecture about the most miraculous method to become enlightened quickly, they became happy and radiant with a smile on their lips.